True scary hiking horror stories. The Appalachian Trail at mile marker 847 was where everything went wrong for Kyle Anderson and his girlfriend Rachel Chun. It was their third day hiking a 50-mile section through North Carolina, and they'd seen exactly what they'd come for: stunning mountain vistas, pristine wilderness, and not another soul for hours at a time, until they found the cairn. "Look at this," Rachel said, stopping on the trail. She pointed to a stack of stones about 3 feet high, arranged in a perfect pyramid beside the path. "That's weird. Cairns are usually markers for trail junctions, but we're miles from any junction." Kyle examined the structure. The stones were arranged with precision, each one balanced perfectly on the one beneath it. But what made his skin prickle was what sat on top: a child's shoe. Small, pink, covered in dirt, but otherwise intact. "That's creepy," Kyle said. "Should we report it to a ranger?" "Report what?" "A stack of rocks." Rachel pulled out her phone to take a picture, but there was no signal this deep in the wilderness. "Let's just keep moving." We got another 6 miles before camp. They hiked on, but Kyle couldn't shake the feeling of unease. That shoe bothered him. Why would someone leave a child's shoe on top of a cairn in the middle of nowhere? An hour later, they found the second cairn. Same design, same precision, but this time with a doll's head on top, blank eyes staring down the trail. "Okay, this is definitely weird," Rachel said, her voice tight. "Someone's messing with hikers." "Or marking something," Kyle replied. "Maybe we should turn back, find a different trail." But turning back meant losing the campsite reservation they'd made months in advance, and adding an extra 2 days to their hike. Rachel checked the map. "We're only 4 miles from the shelter. Let's push through, stay there tonight, and decide in the morning if we want to continue." Against his better judgment, Kyle agreed. They hiked faster, wanting to reach the shelter before dark. The forest grew denser, the canopy blocking out more and more sunlight. And every mile, they found another cairn. Each one had something on top: a rusted knife, a child's drawing, a bundle of human hair tied with twine, a single boot. "Someone's trying to scare hikers off this section of trail," Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. "This is some Blair Witch Project nonsense." Kyle didn't respond. He was looking at the trees around them, noticing something that made his blood run cold. Hanging from branches at regular intervals were more objects. Faded photographs of people Kyle didn't recognize, pieces of torn clothing, and, most disturbing, what looked like primitive dolls made from sticks and animal bones. "Rachel, we need to get off this trail. Now!" But Rachel had stopped walking. She was staring ahead at something that made Kyle's breath catch in his throat. The trail opened into a small clearing, and in the center was a structure that definitely wasn't on any map. It was made entirely of stones, not neatly stacked like the cairns, but built into a rough dome about 6 feet tall. An entrance faced them, a dark opening that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What the hell is that?" Rachel whispered. Kyle pulled out his phone to try calling for help again, but the screen was dead despite having full battery when he'd checked an hour ago. Rachel's phone was the same, completely dead, screens black and unresponsive. "That's not natural," Kyle said. "Electronics don't just die simultaneously like that. We're leaving right now." But as they turned to retrace their steps, they found their way blocked. More cairns had appeared on the trail behind them, at least a dozen, arranged in a line that completely blocked the path. And on top of each one sat a human skull, all facing toward Kyle and Rachel with empty eye sockets that seemed to track their movement. "Those weren't there," Rachel said, her voice rising with panic. "We just came from there. Those weren't there." Kyle grabbed Rachel's hand and pulled her off the trail into the forest. If they couldn't go back the way they came, they'd bushwhack through the trees, find another trail, find civilization, Find help. They ran, branches tearing at their clothes and faces, their hiking boots slipping on loose leaves and hidden roots. Behind them, Kyle heard something that made his legs nearly give out. Singing, a child's voice, high and sweet, singing a nursery rhyme Kyle recognized from his own childhood. Rin around a rosy, pocket full of posies. Don't listen, Kyle gasped, pulling Rachel forward. Just run. But the singing followed them, seeming to come from multiple directions at once. And now Kyle could see more structures in the forest, more stone domes, dozens of them, arranged in what might have been a pattern if seen from above. And around each dome were cairns, and on top of each cairn sat offerings. Shoes, dolls, photographs, bones. Rachel screamed and pointed ahead. Standing among the trees was a figure. It looked like a child from a distance, but as Kyle's eyes focused, he realized it was something wearing a child's shape like a costume. Its proportions were wrong, limbs too long, head tilted at an impossible angle, skin that seemed to shift and ripple like water. The figure smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp and too numerous, and continued singing, "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." More figures emerged from behind the stone structures, all wearing the shapes of children, all wrong in ways that made Kyle's primitive brain scream danger. They formed a circle around Kyle and Rachel, closing in slowly, still singing that terrible nursery rhyme in perfect harmony. "Kyle, what do we do?" Rachel's voice was barely a whisper, thick with terror. Kyle looked around desperately and saw one gap in the circle of figures, a narrow opening between two of them, leading deeper into the forest. It was almost certainly a trap, but it was their only option. When I say go, we run for that gap. Don't look back. Don't stop for anything. Ready? Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. Go! They sprinted for the gap. The figures didn't pursue immediately. Instead, they continued singing, their voices rising in volume as Kyle and Rachel crashed through the underbrush. But then the singing stopped, replaced by something worse. Laughter. Children's laughter, echoing to the forest from every direction, building to a crescendo that seemed to shake the very trees. Kyle's foot caught on something, a root or a rock, and he went down hard, his ankle twisting painfully. Rachel stopped, trying to help him up, and that's when they saw it. Directly ahead, no more than 50 yards away, was a road, an actual paved road, with a car driving past, mundane and normal, and impossible given how far they should be from any road. "There!" Rachel shouted, hauling Kyle to his feet. They limped toward the road, the laughter behind them intensifying, feeling hot breath on their necks, feeling fingers brushing their backs. They burst out of the forest and onto the shoulder of the road. A car swerved, honking, and Kyle looked back at the forest. The figures had stopped at the tree line, unable or unwilling to follow onto the road. They stood there, dozens of them now, still wearing those terrible child shapes, watching with eyes that reflected no light. And then, one by one, they turned and walked back into the forest, disappearing among the trees until Kyle and Rachel were alone on the side of the road, gasping for breath, their phones suddenly buzzing back to life with missed messages and notifications. A pickup truck pulled over, and an elderly man rolled down his window. "You folks okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Kyle opened his mouth to explain, but found he couldn't form words. How could he explain what they'd seen? Who would believe them? "We got lost," Rachel finally managed. "On the trail. Can you help us get back to civilization?" The old man studied them for a moment, his expression grave. "Which trail were you on?" "Appalachian Trail. Around mile marker 847. The man's face went pale. "Jesus, you're lucky you made it out. That section's been closed for years. Too many disappearances. 23 people gone missing on that stretch since 1987. No bodies ever found. Forest Service keeps putting up signs and barriers, but hikers keep ignoring them, cutting to the fence lines. Kyle felt his stomach drop. We didn't see any barriers. No signs. Nothing. They're there, the old man said quietly. About a mile back from where the cairns start appearing. Most people see them and turn around. But some people don't see them, or can't see them. And those are the ones who disappear. He drove them to the nearest ranger station, where Kyle and Rachel gave their statements. The rangers were polite but clearly skeptical, especially when Kyle and Rachel described the stone structures and the figures that looked like children. Probably dehydration, one ranger suggested, combined with fear and isolation. The mind plays tricks in the wilderness. But 3 days later, a search party was sent to investigate. They found the cairns Kyle and Rachel had described, found the offerings on top, found the stone structures arranged in patterns that suggested intelligent design. What they didn't find was any evidence of the childlike figures, no footprints or tracks except for Kyle and Rachel's own. And they found something else. Carved into the bark of trees throughout that section of forest were names. 23 names. The names of every person who disappeared on that stretch of trail since 1987. The section was permanently closed after that. The entire area fenced off with warnings about unstable terrain and dangerous wildlife. But Kyle knows the truth. Those things are still there, among the cairns and the stone domes, wearing the shapes of children and singing their terrible songs, waiting for the next hiker who can't see the warnings, who wanders into their territory and becomes number 24 on the list carved into those trees. Kyle and Rachel never hiked again. Some experiences break the love of nature, replace it with the knowledge that wilderness isn't empty. It's inhabited by things that predate humanity, things that have learned to lure and trap, things that collect offerings and build monuments to their hunger. The Appalachian Trail at mile marker 847 remains closed. But every year, a few hikers go missing in the general area, their last known locations just outside the official closure zone. And every year, search parties find more cairns, more offerings, more stone structures. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is right, people camping nearby report hearing children singing nursery rhymes in the darkness of the forest. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.